Hello, superstars! Let's get right into this week's edition of the Norwood News Newsletter for Friday, February 5th, 2021. We are going to have plenty to talk about when it comes to the reopening of schools. I know there's a lot of confusion about that, even though there's been a lot of information that has come, especially as part of the BCPS reopening plan that was shared a little while back. We will get into all of that and try to clear up any of the confusion. Let's just first start, as usual, with our important upcoming dates. On Tuesday, February 9th is going to be another installment of our Norwood Bedtime Stories series, so make sure that you're aware of that. Wednesday, February 10th is an asynchronous day for students, so no live sessions unless you already have that arrangement with your particular teachers. Thursday, February 11th, report cards will be available, and there will be more information to come about that, but normally that is made available through Schoology, so we'll go into that at another time. Tuesday, February 16th is this following Norwood Bedtime Stories installment. And then lastly, Wednesday, February 17th, even though it is a Wednesday, it is not an asynchronous day. It is a live instructional day for students. So please be aware of that. Live classes on February 17th, not asynchronous or independent work. Now, when it comes to the reopening plan, the bottom line, what you need to be aware of is that it is completely voluntary for the families to decide as to whether they want to have their children remain in virtual learning full time or to allow them to return for a phased reentry. And you can always change your mind. That is the key thing. We respect every family's decision. It is an individual and personal decision, and there's a lot of things that go into it. And so we completely understand. And obviously, how your children are doing and how they've been adapting to virtual learning, any special needs they may have, and then your personal feelings about the situation involving the sanitation and the virus, and that is all completely up to the family to decide. We are not going to judge anyone either way. We just want to get on the same page as to what you have to do either way you want to go. It is going to be hybrid instruction, which means that there will be both virtual learning and in-person learning occurring at the same time. And it's going to begin March 1st, but depending on when you fill out a survey is when your student actually returns, because you can wait a little bit, you can change your mind, from starting at virtual learning and then going into in-person learning. So here's what the process is. On the BCPS website, you can click on this link and you can see this in English, this student timeline is what they call it. And not only does it tell you the general timeline in which students are to return for those who opt to have their children return, this is not a forced thing. It also tells you the cohorts, the way they group students into groups A, B, and C, C being the virtual full-time students, and then A and B being the kind of a switching of a sense where they do both virtual and in-person. So there is some in-person, but just to alleviate so that not everyone is back in at the same time. So it's going to flip a little bit based on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday and Friday, which day of the week. And you can see that all clearly identified and how A and B in-person cohorts actually flip on the day of the week from being in-person to virtual, while C remains virtual. And there's just a little more information here, but basically when it comes to the return timeline, what you need to know is that on the left, it talks about which groups are in which phases are being discussed, and on the right, it's which week they can return. And so, for example, public separate day schools are those 6 schools that BCPS has that are for students of high needs and different disabilities, and it's not your typical public school. So Norwood is not included in this, so that students in those schools have the ability to opt in and restart on March 1st. Also, students in preschool, whether it be 3 or 4 year programs, as well as pre-kinder, kinder, and grades 1 and 2. So that's preschool through grade 2 can also opt in to start as early as March 1st. There are other weeks up until March 15th, the next group that they can start, but that's when the earliest that they can return. Phase 3, all students in grades 3 through 12 who have special needs for outside general education, and I don't mean just like one course, if only during reading they pull your child out to get help by a reading specialist, or they see an occupational therapist or a physical therapist or anybody for 1 or 2 classes here and there, that is not what we're talking about. We are talking about students who have all of their needs completely served outside of general education. Again, that's a very high needs group. So within grades 3 through 12 of that high needs population, you can start as early as March 15th, Or if you have an older child at a high school level who is enrolled in this specific CTE program, it's a career and technical education program, those that have been specifically selectively notified by the school. So it doesn't even mean all of the CTE students. Again, this doesn't apply for Norwood, but we just wanted to let you know in case you have other older children in your household that this may apply to. And then for phase four, it's actually broken up, which is why you see it repeated twice, into two subcategories. There's those students in 6 through 9, 6 and 9, not 6 through 9, but grades 6 and grades 9, that, just normal run-of-the-mill students, beyond what has already been discussed, as early as March 22nd. And then the remaining run-of-the-mill students in grades 3 through 5, 7 through 8, and then 10 through 12, which is everything else that was not caught, is going to start as early as April 6th. That's the soonest that they could opt in. So this is all, again, voluntary if you choose to opt in, and there are more opportunities beyond these dates within that earliest point that they could decide to be opted in, that you could fill out a survey. So now that we have the return timeline discussed a little more in depth, and you have it down here on the left side, you can click on this. If you look at the written version, the timeline is going to be available here for you to look at, and it tells you that it's just a general overview of the dates by which certain groups of students can begin their phase re-entry for in-person learning. We just went over that. Now, on the right is the kind of complementary table, which looks kind of similar but has an extra column in the middle, and it's a little confusing as to what exactly this means. These are the request windows for in-person learning. So to be able to request in-person learning, you have to fill out a specific survey, and we are going to include in the description of this video that survey. You can click here in the written form of the newsletter, and that's what this survey is right here. It is bilingual, it is in English and Spanish, and it has that same table that you can see that describes what we're about to go into. Just please fill out one per student. So if you have multiple children at Norwood or multiple children in different schools at BCPS, please one per student. I know that seems tedious, but we really need to centralize our information to make this really fast and efficient, especially since you have the ability to change your mind and we don't want to do things very last minute. So please take the time to fill out the information. I know it seems like you should already have it, but remember, we are still recovering and consolidating information from the ransomware attack. We have new systems that have been deployed recently to help staff, but nonetheless, it wouldn't hurt to make sure we have your most up-to-date information. So we appreciate your understanding with filling out. It's actually a very brief survey. You could probably, since a lot of them are dial answers, fill it out in a matter of minutes. But going back to what this request windows are. So on the left, you have a similar category of which phases we're talking about. And you can see it's a little more generalized because phase 4 is actually grouped together. On the far right, it's the start dates, which is the soonest that group could start. But then it has all these other sub-weeks beyond that. So the ones in bold are the ones that correspond to these in the return timeline that we talked about. But then, okay, so what are these other weeks underneath those within that group, that phase talk about? Well, that's where the survey window comes into play. So let's take an example. If you have a child that is in preschool through grade 2, which could apply to many students at Norwood, and you want them to start as soon as the week of March 1st for in-person learning, you have to fill out that survey by today, February 5th. We publish this newsletter every Friday by 5 p.m. as it says. That's when the window closes. Now, say you can't do that, or you missed it, or you weren't aware, it's okay, because now you can do it between February 6th and February 19th. You can fill out that same survey, and then if you do it, then they will be able to start the earliest and the week of March 8th. Going on, same exact thing. If you do it between February 20th and March 5th, you will be able to have them start sometime within the week of March 22nd, and so on. It's the same exact thing. Now, phase 4, remember, it has two components. It had that grade 6 and 9, and then all the other ones that make up 3 through 12, normal run-of-the-mill students that don't have any special needs or anything. Well, then that's described here. Week of March 22nd, you got to do it by March 12th. You got to fill out the survey by March 12th if you want to get your kids in and that fall within phase 4. For grade 6 and 9, they'll start as early as March 22nd, and for all the other ones, they start as early as April 6th. So if you have a student that is in grade, let's say 7, right? It's not 6 or 9, and you do it by March 12th, they won't be able to start until the week of April 6th. That's just because 6 and 9 is only able to start as early as March 22nd for that phase. And then for all just means if you haven't done it yet for whatever reason and then you change your mind, you have all the way up until May 7th. That's the last window, April 24th to May 7th. If you fill out the survey between that time period, your child is eligible to return, for in-person learning the week of May 31st. So this is what we want to convey is that it's voluntary. Phase three, again, it's not if your child receives any outside general education help, it's if they receive entirely outside general education help. And the CTE program students are selective. They have to be notified by the school. It's not for all of them. So hopefully that clears up any confusion. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to the school. This is in accordance with Governor Hogan's orders to have schools return by March 1st, and then Superintendent Dr. Williams followed up announcing that that was very much in the case and that they were going to move forward with that in accordance to the BCPS reopening plan. There's more information on the BCPS website about various things related to reopening, so feel free to explore that and check that out on your own time. Now, there's a new incentive here, new attendance star of the month that we are starting. Now, we have worked really hard to create a program to just simply recognize not only those who have really great attendance, but we also wanted to take the time to separate and recognize those who have improved their attendance. Because we really understand that this past year has been a huge struggle. It's been very difficult for both the students as well as the parents to adjust to. With all the different challenges that we've had thrown our way, we can understand why it may have been difficult for your child to attend consistently, especially if you have to shuffle them back and forth between different locations, daycare, family members. All of those resources weren't always available like before the pandemic. So we just want to say thank you, and for those who have worked to help support your kids so that they improve their attendance or to keep them having great attendance, we want to give a prize basket to both categories every month. And we have a little flyer here that you can read more information about how exactly that works. But they're going to receive a certificate as well as a prize basket. And yes, it has some goodies for the kids, but it also has some goodies for the whole family. Because again, we are including the families in this. We want to reward you for your efforts, for everything that you do. There will be gift cards and other adult-friendly prizes that will help you and give you a little bit of a break, whether it be to some of the community restaurants or places that you can go shopping. We wanted to just give you guys a little bit of respite. So thank you to everything that you do. We really appreciate, and we want to show that to the students who are, again, just clutch coming in, attending their virtual learning, and doing what they need to be doing. Now, a message from Nurse Debbie about school reopening. Now, we just want to make sure that everybody's aware that yes, this might create a little bit of anxiety, whether you're not sure or on the fence about having your child return to in-person learning. And again, it all depends on how you feel they are doing so far with virtual learning. So just know that please, it is important to make sure that all of their health needs are addressed. That means anything that they would ordinarily need to fill out to be in school for registration, if they're a first-time student or if they're a new student, make sure that is up to date. If there's anything that she has been contacting you or trying to reach you that you need, please make sure you follow up with that. That means all vaccination records have to be up to date, physicals, forms that have to be signed by both either the dentist or the doctor, the pediatrician. That all has to be up to date. And I know that can be difficult when it comes to making appointments and finding the time to do so, but please call, verify with your doctors, with your dentist, everything that you have to do to turn in those forms to Nurse Debbie. They can be emailed to her or they can be faxed directly. So rather than wasting a trip to the pediatrician or the dentist or anything that has to fill out your form or get you vaccination records, you can call them and ask them if they can fax it directly to the school. Here is the fax number. It's 410-887-7057. That's always possible. You don't have to physically do it yourself necessarily. A lot of times they are more than willing to do that. Also, the Maryland law requires a physical to be up to date within the first time that they enroll, and also having age-appropriate immunizations, as we just mentioned, a blood test. If you recall, when you first register your child, there's also a page, a section about blood tests to see if you qualify based on several affected zip codes that had higher levels in recent years. So if you live in one of those zip codes that form outlined, you need to go, when you go to the doctor to do the physical, they should also be able to knock out a lead blood test to make sure that there's no evidence of lead contamination or higher levels of lead. So that is very important. And also, if they have any medications that they need to take, please make sure you get the medication orders to the school so that they can be able to disseminate medication. They will not be able to do that. Otherwise, it's very minimal things that you should have already filled out a health form when you registered your child about whether you were willing to let them disseminate things like, an antacid for upset stomach, or Tylenol, or pain reliever, acetaminophen, that kind of thing. That's the most they can do if you do not get them this medication order. Otherwise, you cannot send them with medication themselves. So please make sure that you contact Nurse Debbie. Her phone number is here, 443-809-6029, or her email is also here, and you can just follow up with her directly if you need to, or contact the school in general. Now, there are more bedtime stories to come. Again, this session continues to be a hit. We really appreciate those students who come out regularly to come hear these stories from our staff. So we've selected the next line of teachers, and just make sure to read the flyer in terms of it's going to be February 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. First in Math is back. So remember that we talked about last week that Miss O'Hare, our instructional coach for Norwood, decided to make a short video to explain how students are to access this. Because as you know, without BCPS1, everything's a little bit different. And sometimes when you're doing some work for students or helping them with their work, they may have to be prompted to put in some credentials that ordinarily you'd never have to do. And so if you need that, please contact your teacher. But First in Math is one of these things where it's going to be linked by the math course within their Schoology page. So just go into Schoology, they go into their math course, whichever grade they're in, and they'll be able to see a link for First in Math right on there on that home page. And if not, it may even have a little icon that they click in. And so the video that you can see here, she talks a little bit about how you can get to it and what it looks like and what are some of the things that you can do on your own time. And these are fun interactive games and activities that will help them build their math concepts and their proficiency. So this is actually fun and interactive things for them to do on their own time. Lastly, internet solutions for those in need. We've talked about this over and over again. We have updated the flyer so that now it does not include the 6-month internet giveaway by BCPL. That window had closed back in early January, so that is the only change that has happened. So this survey, when you go to the survey, it actually is now up to date and does not include that information, but has everything else. Everything else is still completely active. And in addition to this, it may not be internet, but it's still technology related. They have Chromebooks. You just have to weigh whether or not you want to be financially responsible for something your child may do. So if you really have the type of child that you don't think you could trust, especially if you can't be there with them while they're doing virtual learning, and they may be likely to damage or lose the Chromebook from the library, you are going to be on the hook for about $300+, I think a little bit more, for whatever it is that gets lost, whether it be just a charger or the whole computer. They have different levels of responsibility. So if you think that is something that's doable, if you've been on the wait list, please inquire about that. But the hotspots are the exact same thing. You will be financially responsible for hotspots. It's just considerably less to replace a hotspot that gets lost or broken. That is it for today's edition, and happy Black History Month. We want to make sure that we recognize that this is a very important month for all students of African descent, and we want to praise all of the historical advancements of their forefathers, of all the ancestors that have come and done things for this country to make it as great as it is. So we will have more throughout the month to talk about Black History Month, but nonetheless, we want to make sure that all students recognize that importance. Thank you, as always, for your time. Sorry this was a little bit more in detail, but we wanted to make sure we understood everything about reopening. If you have any questions, contact anyone from the school or myself, David Castro, your school to community coordinator. Have a great week and weekend, and keep on learning.